Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Surah Al-Hijr, chapter 15. Today we will cover verses 88 to 99, and this will end this surah. These are the references, and this is our contact in case anyone has a query or question. Recap so far. The Quran is a complete evidence-based book of guidance. When the Quran says that, it also produces the proof or the evidence of its own completeness. Because if we understand the Quran the way it wants us to understand, then we will come to this conclusion ourselves that we do not need any other book of guidance. Events in the human world follow human laws and values. The law of requital ensures every human deed has an outcome. The Quran, that is the Arabic text, is preserved and protected for all times. There are enough resources for sustenance kept in the planet for all times for mankind. Their equitable distribution is the responsibility of men in power. Competitiveness is kept within us and is meant to be directed towards doing Saleh deeds. This is the competitiveness which has transformed our world. And if we bring this in line with the Quranic value system, then we will see that how humanity progresses on the moral platform, how it will come together and fear and huzn will disappear from the world. Everything in the world is created from water. Life and death in the universe follows Allah's laws, and these are kept outside the control of human hands. For example, our physical death. We cannot interfere with our death. Those who tread on the path of the Quran see tangible benefits as described in various verses. Their developed self becomes evidence of their being on Sirat al-Mustaqim. The model of Ibrahim is presented to be kept in mind. He followed the wahi of Allah and benefited in this life and achieved the successes of the life of the hereafter. The people of Lut got destroyed due to their evil deeds. This cut short their life in this world. There is nothing for them in the hereafter. We know Quran has presented the examples from the history and based on the permanent values given in the Quran has put forward the laws for the rise and fall of nations. So that is the way Quran wants us to view the history of mankind. The destruction of the people of Madian and Thamud was also due to creating injustice in the world. Whenever we create imbalances in the world, we set out on the road of self-destruction and create hell in the society. So that means if we follow the path of the Quran, there is no decline built into it. In fact, prosperities and successes keep multiplying, and we keep creating better and better world with the passage of time. When we do not follow the Quranic values, the phrase history repeats itself becomes applicable. And this is what we see in today's world, that the nations go up and then they decline. Whereas in the Quranic system of Deen, there is no decline. Life is about advancing forward, not going around in circles, because the Quran has very clearly stated that whole universe is created as haqq. Human creation is part of that haqq. That is for constructive results. If we do not produce constructive results, then we are on batil, which is falsehood. Under Deen, history should never be allowed to repeat itself. Now let us look at the first verse for our today's presentation, 1588, acquiring a higher understanding about the human psyche. The Quran says, La tamudanna ainika ila ma matana bihi azwajum minhum wa la tahzan alayhim wahfid janahaka lil Momineen. After these accounts from history and these fundamental facts from the Quran, do not even glance at those means and resources for physical life which we have given to different groups of people from among them. Previous nations possessed far greater means and resources than them, nor should you torment yourself in this concern that why do these people not protect themselves from the destructions of life by coming to the right path. Neither previous nations listen to their messengers, nor will these listen to your message. People did listen, but over here Quran is saying that the majority does not seem to be interested in the message of the Quran. You should now, by desisting from being concerned about these opponents, Continue to gather those people under your wings who have accepted Iman in the truth of this message. And in this way, through suitable education and training, keep producing maturity and focus in the Jamaat's organization. Verse 1588, to remain aware of the distractions on the Quranic path of life. It's not an easy path. We have gone through a number of verses where Quran has pointed to the pitfalls which we come across on this path. Because conforming with the majority is an easier path. It's the path of least resistance. When we stand up against batil, then we will face resistance. Before the Quran, the challenge is to help us discover our own potentials and to lay bare all those learning points which initially have to be learned through intense self-learning endeavors, i.e., no Deen exists, we only have the books and lectures of Allama Parvez. So I put down these comments so that we know that progressively we are going forward on this path. It is not that we are static. As our understanding keeps increasing and we can apply it and understand the world around us, that means we are making a progress. We are part of the capitalist system, which is based on the value that reward is for the capital, not the work. And as a consequence, we see people who are extremely rich and we are attracted towards them. And that is the initial position when we are coming to the Quran, because that is the position from which we started. And we were not happy with that state of the world, and we said we are looking for an alternative. The Quran has referred to this aspect in many verses and cautioned us strongly not to be distracted by this, because the distraction weakens our resolve. It slows us down. And if we slow down, then that means in our finite time on this planet, we will be losing a very important resource of time which is given to us by Allah, and continue to gather firmly on the path of Iman. Those who do not approve of this system look for an alternative, and depending upon their motivation, some of them approach the Quran and find an appeal in its solution. So not everyone who comes to the Quran understands the Quran as a system of Deen. They might see it as a source of salvation for their own self, which is not the purpose of the Quran, because the Quran is to alleviate mankind from those evils and problems which human intellect creates. They volunteer to accept its challenge, having been dissatisfied by their previous life, and start to work on understanding its guidance in detail. This is a very important point, and this is where we move from one domain to another domain, and the path between the two domains, that is the defining line between the two, is clearly differentiated by the Quran. That is essentially the line which separates haq from batil. Witnessing the apparent strength of the man-devised system, some may become disheartened that if only Allah could provide some power miraculously, then we can see the evolution of the system of Deen. Some people do expect some kind of miracles at the start of approaching the Quran, because wherever the Quran says Allah does it, they get an impression as if Allah directly interferes in human world. The Quran clearly states to stop looking for miracles, as such a mentality can never create the Deen of the Quran, even if it somehow acquires power. By omitting going through the process of development of the self as laid down by Allah, the system of Deen can never emerge through such human beings. Because Quran is asking for a total conversion, and it is not something we cannot check it. We can check it in the light of the Quran, and that is why it is important to make a collective effort. It's not a solo effort. When we come together, then we can explain to each other and also serve as judges on each other. We can assess each other, evaluate each other, help each other to develop and grow. Another important point implicit here is that once we have become Momin and come together, we need to recognize this aspect as well. Any doubts and suspicions will never lead to that resolve and steadfastness, which is so essential for Deen. This is why Allah emphasizes continuously for our training to have trust and conviction in Him, that is in His laws. Of course, we can only have conviction in His laws if we firstly understand those laws and how do these work. And this is important for us, that steadfastness is absolutely essential for the system of Deen and for the development of ourselves. Because if we look around, people who do not have iman in the values of the Quran, see how steadfast they are in their aims. And just see how people strongly follow evil and they are willing to even kill others. And so this is the point which Quran is making through its guidance. Let us look at the next two verses, 89 and 91. Warning others is a sign of the self's development. وَقُلْ إِنِّي أَنَا النَّذِيرُ الْمُبِينُ كَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَى مُقْتَسِمِينَ الَّذِينَ جَعَلُوا الْقُرْآنَ عِضِينَ. And keep telling the opposing party that I am warning you openly about the destructive outcomes of your wrong path. The destruction about which you warn them, these people do have some inkling of it. These people used to take oaths among each other to oppose you, and then through false oaths would assure you of their companionship. Because human beings can say whatever they like. It is very difficult to judge their hearts or their mind because they have the ability to hide their true feelings. And that is why Quran is guiding us on this aspect. And used to expend all their energy in spreading this news that the Quran is nothing other than a lie, falsehood, magic, and sorcery, a deen. Consequently, we made them suffer in all kinds of hardships and adversities, and these were nevertheless light jolts. Just witness what comes next. And we know that when Quran relates to itself, it means that it is human beings who do wrong, and as a result, they also suffer and they get enough warning for what they do. There is no shortcut in Deen. The Quran has repeatedly pointed to the permanent values of warning others after becoming a Momin. This helps us to strengthen our own self, and this also acts as a reminder to remain on this path. Through this reminding, we value our efforts and remain aware of our thoughts and deeds. Warning others means that we have to know what we are warning them about. So we gain knowledge ourselves, we follow this path, and we know that the path which we are following is better than what these people are following. And we also know that we need others to come together to change the system. So this is part of their learning process. It is not just merely warning others that don't do it. We have to explain to them that what we are saying to them is positive. Secondly, it is for their own good. By noting al-Muqtasimeen, it is noted that they also divided the Quran arbitrarily into parts and belittled it, propagating that it was nothing but fabrication, sorcery, or soothsaying. And we see this being manifested all around us in the world of religion, where people just read it for the sake of getting some kind of an abstract reward. It could also be related to the distribution of the means of sustenance, which is carried out unjustly by human beings. The warning in 1589 can also be related to this. Could also be related to taking false oaths. For example, we see liars using terms like honestly speaking, or in my honest opinion, and similar terms. We see that we hear this on media continuously. And whereas these people are telling lies in many instances, but they want to portray it as if they are speaking truth. And truth is when we know the facts. The Quran wants us to be precise and honest all the time without using such terminology. I put it down because I witness as well, and people can be carried away that so-and-so, since so assertively saying this, but at the same time saying that I'm honest, I'm truthful, which means if one is honest and truthful, he or she doesn't have to say that. We have to just present the facts. So if we speak the language of the Quran and we have Iman, we are telling the truth and people can judge it themselves. Before going to verse 1590, we need to remind ourselves that Allah is cautioning us about the darker sides of the human psyche, which we need to become alive to. So Quran is not only telling us that we change ourselves, but Quran is also asking us to recognize the negativities in other people as well, so that we are not deceived. For example, recognizing hypocrisy in the world is very important, because people can hide their true intentions and then they can cause harm. In our time, we are now more aware of countless attempts to apparently understand the Quran, but many are approaching the Quran with divided minds, and as a consequence, never acquire that self which meets the criterion laid down by Deen. And we have seen it, that people come to TOLU-E-ISLAM as well. They read the books by Allama Parvez, and still they don't find enough motivation to stay on this path. Here we look at those finer aspects of the human psyche to which Allah draws our attention, and we manage to identify these because we are looking with the lens of Deen. Now, in verse 1591, a term Deen has come, and I thought to share what is written in the meanings of the Quran. Allazina ja'alul Qur'ana Deen. They treat the Quran as a Deen, and we will see there are some important aspects in this elaboration. Among these opponents, there are also those who repeatedly assure you that they are with you, pledging allegiance. The path and ideology of these people is summed up in one word, Deen, by the Quran. This word has very comprehensive meanings, which are to shatter something into pieces. That is, they approach the Quran with a view to cause dissensions. Their attitude is that whatever issue is in their vested interest from the Quran, they adopt it. That is what suits them. They follow it, and they use it as business as well for earning money. Whatever goes against them, they conceal it. The outcome of such a path is described by the Quran. For example, Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, أَفَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضٍ فَمَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا خِزْيٌ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ يُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ أَشَدِّ الْعَذَابِ. That these people, they follow part of the book and then they deny the other part. That is, they do kufr. And what is the result of following such a path is that they will suffer. They will suffer in this world as well as in the hereafter. They will have nothing. Ila ashaddil azab. And this will be as a consequence of remaining divided. And if you remember, the earlier part of this verse is that these people first turn out people from their homes, and then they go over there and they start giving them charity and some kind of a shelter, and they think they have done a great job. And we see it all around in the world where wars are created first, and then charities reach over there to help them. And this is a very severe charge which the Quran levels against them, that first you do wrong and then you try to cover it up with doing some good as well. Whereas you shouldn't have turned them out of their homes in the first place. Humiliation in this life and a severe chastisement in the hereafter, i.e. when people do shirk. And this also points to all the Muslim countries which study the Quran, they read the Quran, they recite it frequently, and still they can't stop evil in the world, and they never promote what is maruf given in the Quran. And we see it across the world. So all the evil, all the batil which is taking place in the world is a charge against these people who possess the Quran but do not follow it. It also means lie, deceit, and deception. And we can see that. Also amulets, spells, incantations, sorcery, conjuration. And we can see that how Quranic verses are used to get some kind of abstract sawab. And as a result, these people waste their own time and they misguide others as well. Ponder over the conduct of these people, which has been described by the Quran. Examples of this state of being are clearly visible in different lands across the world. I've tried to be a bit concise over here and not quoted examples, but these things will come before us as we proceed through other verses of the Quran. Now let us look at the verses 92 and 93. Human accountability is a continuous process. Each one of our deeds questions us. And this is very interesting over here, that Quran says that our deeds are questioning our conduct as well. فَوَرَبِّكَ لَا نَسْأَلَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ أَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. The law of requital of your Rabb is a witness on this, that they will be questioned about their deeds. The outcome of this kind of conduct can be nothing but destruction and ruin. That is, our deeds and their outcomes become evidence against us. So they work against us in case we are doing evil. If we are doing good, the question of accountability doesn't come into it, because the good in itself is manifested through our conduct. And we are working towards the system of Deen, and we bring balance in the world. 1592-93, questioning our own and others' conduct is part of developing ourselves. The Quran has used the phrase that each individual will be questioned about his conduct in this life. This is another way of saying that each deed of ours is questioning us about our conduct. This is a very good method of teaching and education where children should develop the ability to question each one of their thoughts and subsequent deeds. They should be trained in this aspect through examples in their daily life. For example, if I do not acquire knowledge, then what will happen? Of course, I will remain ignorant. I will not benefit from the developments taking place around us, and I will not have the conveniences of this life. What impact will this have on my future life? In relation to the Quran, there should be a question about every verse. What exactly is this verse trying to tell me, and how does this relate to the overall context of its guidance in relation to the system of Deen? And of course, on this platform, this is the method we are using to share the interpretation of every verse. Here, a duty is also added for Momineen that they need to carry out this responsibility which the Law of Requital has levied on them. And this is important for us, that not only we are learning and we are changing our own self and we are growing with every passing day, we are also sharing it with others. Firstly, they understand its functioning and its impact on the individual and collective life. Secondly, they then apply it to others and wherever possible remind others. In this reminding of others, they continuously remind themselves. This is a two-way process. When I help others, then I'm actually helping my own self as well. So this is the way we should look at the functioning of the Law of Requital. Verses 94 to 96, Shirk leads to contaminated psyche and has dire consequences in this life and the hereafter, because the hereafter depends on what we do in this life. So that is intrinsically linked with our conduct in this life. Fasda bima tumaru wa arid anil mushrikeen inna kafainakal mustahzi'een allazina yaj'aluna ma'allahi ilahan akhara fasawfa ya'lamun. Therefore, O Rasool, do not concern yourself about them. Rather, as you have been told, by moving away from them, organize yourself separately and stay clear of those people who associate other powers with Allah. Those people who associate others in the sovereignty of Allah, ridiculing you, they feel very pleased that they are doing a great deed. Ridiculing does give some kind of a satisfaction to human beings, that as if they have done something great and they have confronted others in their own opinion, but without using any of the permanent values of the Quran. We are enough from your side for you. Our Law of Requital will deal with them, and they will very soon know what the ultimate outcome of the ridicule is. Verses 94 to 96, our words carry value and importance. We need to be aware of this aspect. Regarding Shirk, we have discussed this previously. It is mixing the values and commands of the Quran with man-devised thoughts and laws. This leads to not even getting benefits of this physical domain, and such nations lag behind in every sphere of worldly life. Because kufr is totally rejecting the Quran, totally rejecting the wahi of Allah and Allah's guidance, and thinking that the life will end with death. So such people will make maximum effort to get maximum benefits of this physical life. Shirk means that we are not sure, and you mix it up with this kind of thinking that maybe there is a life in the hereafter, and as a result, people follow man-made laws as well as some values of the Quran where they think they will get some salvation. And such people will always have weak resolve, because they will not put in their best in this life, because they are not doing kufr, and they are not on iman as well, where they are absolutely 100% sure that there is a life which goes beyond death. So this is the problem with shirk, because it develops, it creates such a psyche which is never sure of their own path of life. Ridicule is specifically mentioned here. We have gone through this aspect earlier as well, that when we ridicule others, this means we are not taking life seriously. We are not taking the message seriously. If somebody is giving us a message, we think that it is just jest, and we come back and mock them. And this is a very basic existence of human psyche. So this is something which we should keep it in mind, that those who mock, they are at a very, very low level of existence. The fact is that wounds caused by swords and spears can be confronted, but cuts caused by ridicule and mockery are unbearable, especially because the one who possesses an eminent and lofty character cannot descend to the level to which it is necessary to descend in order to smear and accuse. And this is a very important point, that we can judge others on this basis, that if they are mocking and they are using smear and accuse and falsely accuse, that means they are not serious about life. They are ignoring something which is very important for their own self. And as a result, they are harming themselves. Of course, at the time when they're passing any bad comments, it hurts. But that hurt should be replaced by another feeling, another understanding, which the Quran is pointing to. And that is important, because they are not rejecting us as human beings, but they are rejecting Allah's message, which means they are rejecting something which is good for their own self. And that means they will have nothing in the hereafter. And it is only the consciousness of the loftiness of his aim and the purity of his mission which produces the resilience in him to bear this. The Quran here has provided guidance by stating that it is against Allah and he is enough to take care of all this. And that is something which we have to train ourselves, that when people are against the Quran, they are not against us, they are against Allah. And we are on the side of Allah. We are his companions in carrying out the duties and responsibilities which he has taken on himself. And it's a gigantic task and a very important task which gives us eminence. We need to bear in mind all the time that by following the Quran, we are acting on behalf of Allah. And that is an important point. We need to bear in mind all the time that by following the Quran, we are acting on behalf of Allah. Therefore, we need to acquaint ourselves with the Quran in as much detail as possible and let our thinking be guided by its value system. Because if we are acting on behalf of Allah, then we have to understand his book extremely well. Next is 2 verses 97, 98. The path of Deen is eternal, hence not to be distracted. وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. We are aware that whatever these people utter has a great effect on your sensitive heart. You become grieved due to this. So that means Allah is recognizing this. It is not that Allah is not recognizing, because Quran has very clearly stated that he is wherever we are. So he is present everywhere in the universe. But do not care in the least about these assertions. This is in effect what they wish, that by entangling you in these matters, they expand your energies negatively. And they plan it. If we look at the media around us, you will see that they deliberately plan it, and they deliberately waste their own time, of course, and the time of others. So if we get distracted, we will also waste our time. So we should conserve our energies and direct them in the path of Allah. You should remain fully engaged in the completion of your program so that the system of Rabubiyat of Allah becomes shaped in such a way that it manifests as a living model of Allah's hamd and appreciation. And when Allah says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, hamd does not mean that he is looking for praise and appreciation from our side. He wants us to understand the system of Deen and the good results which emanate out of such a system where humanity benefits, where khawf and huzn disappear. And that is important to understand, that hamd means that all those good aspects, the prosperities and successes associated with the system of Deen as given in the Quran should manifest itself. And when we display those character qualities within our own eminence, then we appreciate that what Allah has noted in the Quran is definitely of benefit, because the change occurs in our life, in our outlook, in our vision. You should do this yourself, and your Jamaat should also do the same. Now let us look at some more details of these verses 97, 98. Education and training leads to higher awareness. Note that it is stated that we have full knowledge of what is passing through your heart due to the scornful words of the opponents. From this, it is clear that a great deal of courage is required in order to bear whatever they say. And that courage is developed through getting education and training in the light of the Quran and developing ourselves through Saleh deeds. In fact, the cause for many quarrels and conflicts in the world is because of what is being expressed. If words can be tolerated, then conflict simply does not escalate further. Very important point noted over here. This confrontation is like a game of tennis. With whatever intensity the opponent hits a ball, if you, however, return it softly and lightly, then the game cannot proceed. So this evil game, we do not want it to proceed. We want to remain focused on our own objective and on our own aim. And we don't want to be distracted so that our important time is not lost and wasted. How many quarrels and conflicts will simply dissipate if we act upon just this small advice of the Quran and just this balanced aspect of the balanced conduct of Rasulullah. But that doesn't mean that we should give up. We have to react and suitably reply as well and respond as well wherever there is a need. And of course, based on rational thinking within the values of the Quran. Hence, we need to keep training ourselves in this respect and keep in mind this advice of Allah. Then the Quran asks us to remain conscious of all these aspects of balanced conduct and form as part of our character. This should be manifested as part of a collective effort as Momineen. Because if we keep reminding ourselves all the time, and while we are living this life and we see the conduct of others, and of course the others ridiculing it, maybe even declaring those who follow the Quran as kafir and munkar hadith and those kind of labels, we get training, we get educated, because in the system of Deen, far higher opposition will come. And for that, we have to train ourselves at this stage. In the present situation, we need to keep reminding ourselves and assume that all of us are doing it in our daily life, wherever we are. Last verse of this surah, 1599, process of conviction and Rabubiyat through higher understanding. Wa'bud rabbaka hatta yatikal yaqeen. And in this way, adopt the rule of your Rabb completely until such time that this proclamation of yours, the system to which you invite, will be the holder of extremely joyful results, and the end of those who follow the wrong system will be ruin and destruction. Reaches the point of manifested evidence and appears before the word as a concrete reality. So over here, wa'bud, by saying wa'bud, that follow it, obey it, and rabbaka, that of course relates to Rabubiyat. And you give yourself time. So it's not a path which will end, because this is an eternal path. This goes beyond our death. So people join in, work for the system of Deen, and the older fellows then leave this life through their physical death, and more join in, and the system becomes stronger and stronger. Yate yakal yaqeen, and it is based on evidence. If change has occurred within us, that means what Quran is saying is truth, is haqq. 1599, after getting on the path of Iman, never be distracted. Here the Quran has summed up the surah by reminding us to remain firmly convinced about the Rabubiyat of Allah and to keep striving on this path by keeping in mind all that we have learned in various verses. What will happen next if we keep striving on this path? It will lead to strengthening of our Iman, and that is what Quran says, al-yaqeen, absolutely firm Iman based on evidence. And evidence of our own self. We will know through our own self, developed self, that we are growing and we are reaching that stage where we can establish the system of Deen. And this manifests in the form of a continuously developing self. This development aspect becomes evidence of the fact that our path in life is the correct one, and we see the events in our life and the world around us in the light of the signs of Allah, as noted in the Quran. The Quran puts forward the reality of its guidance before us as a fact, and then invites us to follow its defined path, and all the signs will keep appearing before us as we keep treading steadfastly on this path. For example, it states, Allazina yuqimuna salata wa yutuna zakata wa hum bil akhirati hum yuqinun. That if these are the people, when they establish the system of salat, they establish the system of zakat, that is directly related to the development of the self. Wahum bil akhiratihum yuqinun. In that way, they know that what they are doing is going to produce results in the hereafter, in this life, as well as of the hereafter. It's a very powerful verse. We should concentrate on this and keep it in mind all the time, whatever we are doing in this life. In another verse, it is summed up by saying, Haza basairul linnasi wa hudam wa rahmatul liqawmi yuqinun. Again, see yuqinun, that is yaqeen, that is certainty, conviction. So Quran doesn't leave anything otherworldly. It is very much applicable in this word because this is his word. Of course, in this word, we have to act on his behalf. The message is for the whole of mankind, and then it becomes guidance and a source of rahmat. Rahmat means nourishment, growth, development. For those who acquire conviction through their choice and efforts. So over here, Quran has said, Haza basairul linnasi, that there is every vision, every insight into this Quran. If you're looking, if you have questions in life about your own creation and the way mankind should be and how to eliminate fear and huzn from the world, then all is there in this book. Read through it again and again, discuss it, join those who are on this path, create a Jamaat Momineen, and then see how the results start manifesting through your efforts. Now, summary of main points from Surah Al-Hijr. What I've done is over here, I put down some salient points which I thought we need to reiterate and repeat and have a look again. There's a lot more in this surah as we have gone through a number of presentations. So if we are looking for any particular aspect when we are going through the verses, we should go to that presentation. For the Ummah of the Quran, this program is not confined to any particular piece of land or to a particular area. Its ultimate goal is this, وَأَشْرَقَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا وَوَضِعَ الْكِتَابَ, that whole earth will lighten up with the light of Allah if human beings make effort. If we make effort, then this will happen at some point in time in the future. And depending on our efforts, it could be in the near future. Awadi al-Kataba, of course, it all has to be based on Allah's laws. The whole of planet Earth should awake shining with the light of the system of Rabubiyat in line with the book. So that should be our focus of attention, Rabubiyat in this life. We cannot compromise on that. Allah recognizes the efforts of Jamaat Momineen, and the signs of the self's development are explained in the Quran. So wherever we are, when we are going through the Quran, right from beginning, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, right to the end, we should concentrate on this point, what is in it for us. And that is important because it is the only self which we can change is our own self. And of course, when we collectively come together, we have to look at the system collectively. Allah recognizes the efforts of Jamaat Momineen, and the signs of the self's development are explained in the Quran. This surah also highlights many important aspects of the human psyche related to kufr and to iman. We need to remind ourselves that this path of life with iman is a voluntary decision and will continue till our physical death. And on this path, we cannot compromise with those who have either rejected it or are not fully committed to it. This comes out of the verses of the Quran as we read through them. The Quran essentially divides mankind into two categories, that is Hizb Shaitan and Hizbullah. Hizbullah are those who work for the system of Haqq, for Deen, and they do not want fear and huzn in the world. They want to work for the good of whole of mankind. Next is keeping the functioning of the law of requital in mind and also sharing it with others on a continuous basis is part of this path of Deen. There are no quick fixes on this path because there should not be any quick fixes. The reason is it's an eternal path. We are not short of time. We are of course short of time as far as this physical life is concerned. And since we have inherited man-made system, that is why we have to struggle a lot more than once the system is in place. And that is the thing we should keep it in mind. Of course, the rewards are higher for us as well. But the question over here is not of rewards only. The question over here is that are we happy with the system created by the unbridled human intellect? And if we complain about this system, then Allah has given us the alternative, and then we should work for that. There's no point in complaining about human beings who are acting absolutely precisely when they are not guided by the Quran. So if they are acting like that, it is like if we have a car which has an engine of 1 liter. If we keep complaining all day that why it doesn't give us the performance of 2-liter engine, we have to have a car with 2-liter engine. So we should stop complaining. If we are not on the Quran, we should stop complaining. And if we are on the Quran, still we should stop complaining and do as the Quran is asking us to do under the guidance of Allah, who is all the time present. So there is nothing to complain really. However, the signs do point to the righteousness of its being haqq. The protection and preservation of the Quran is to be recognized and appreciated as we live our life. Part of being on this path is to understand our own psyche as well as the psyche of other human beings with whom we interact in the world. The role human emotions and intellect, i.e. Iblis and Shaitan, play in running human affairs serve as signs for us. Whatever means of sustenance exist on the planet, every human being has a right to their use, and their equitable distribution as per the permanent values of the Quran is the responsibility of the system of Deen. If we remember that Allah has said that He has taken responsibility for all beings in the universe, and if He has taken those responsibilities, then we see unequal distribution of means of sustenance in the world. And this unequal distribution is because there is no Jamaat Momineen who can carry out the responsibilities on behalf of Allah. And this is a very serious charge against us in case we do not follow this path. If we feel self-satisfied that I'm fine in this capitalist system because I'm a beneficiary of it and I can read the Quran day and night and still do nothing on this path and do not join with those who are on this path and who are making efforts to develop their self and then do something about this system, then we are literally wasting our time and we will have a very rude shock in the hereafter. If there is an unjust distribution, then we need to seriously think about it. Some more points. Death is a fact of life, and it reminds each one of us that we have a finite time on this planet. This puts a premium on the utilization of this valuable resource and its utilization within the whole system of the Quran. Next is creation is based on wisdom, that is Hakim, and knowledge, Alim, both to be manifested by Momineen in every aspect of our individual and collective lives. Quran has put a lot of emphasis on these divine attributes with others, so we should keep it in mind that knowledge, once we have acquired, then it has to be utilized for the good of everyone. The focus of the Quran is on those who decide to become Momineen, and when they emerge as a Jamaat, that they work towards establishing Quranic Deen, they figure out their responsibilities as outlined by Allah. Being on Sirat-e-Mustaqim means that we are conscious of the problems created by man-devised system and are also fully conscious of the need for Deen. Nothing distracts from this fundamental fact. Coming together and removing differences is an essential part of this pursuit towards Deen. This path has inbuilt protection, that is Ghafoor, and further development, that is Rahim. The messengers of Allah, for example, Ibrahim, Lut, Shoaib, Saleh, were human beings just like us, and they followed the values of Wahi until their death. They never mixed Haqq and Batil, and they remained firmly on Haqq. Allah did help them through His laws. And thank you very much for your time. Thanks for your time and for sharing this presentation.